Good afternoon. My name is Robert Goss. And as you may know, because you signed up for it, today's webinar is everything you need to know to successfully migrate your calibration data. So we'll get into a ton of stuff about the topic, the approaches, everything else in here in just a second. But, just to go ahead and kick it off, for those of you who don't know me, and I assume if you have attended one of these webinars before, you do, but my name is Robert Goss. I am a senior account manager here at Prime Technologies. I've been with the company for 7 years now, way back in 2016. So it's been quite some time. In that time, I've become a ProCal subject matter expert, worked with all customers, all different types of, all shapes and sizes, large and small, regulated and non-regulated. So I do feel like I have seen a big percentage of the picture and have gotten to work with a lot of different types of companies over these years. So really excited to talk about this subject. That being said, we do have a new presenter today, someone who has not done any webinars. So I will let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mackenzie Buchan, and I'm the Technical Services Manager here at Prime Technologies. I have been working with the company for about 7 years now as well. I started my journey here at Prime on the new product development team as a software engineer, and then transitioned to the ProCal team specializing in implementation and data migration services.
Perfect. Thanks, Mackenzie. And I am really excited to have Mackenzie on here. She's really knowledgeable on this subject, and I couldn't think of anybody else better to have. So before we get into the meat of the presentation and really what you guys are all here today, I just wanted to kind of lay it all out, what we're going to be talking about, what you can expect, and just kind of set the stage for the rest of this presentation. So first of all, obviously, we're going to have an overview of the process. We'll see what it looks like start to finish, from I have my data in a specific format now to all the way to go live and continual usage of the system moving forward. After that, we'll talk a little bit more about database population options and the approaches you can actually take. So there are going to be several different ways to take, data from one source and get it into another. We'll cover a lot of the most popular ones we see. After that, we'll get into picking the best option for your company and your unique scenario. So again, there are different options because, each one fits a better need or fits based on some of the other criteria that you may meet now. So we'll get into all of that. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit more about, how you can ensure that your legacy data, how it is today, is ready to be migrated, ready to be populated into your database, and just all those good steps you can take in advance to set yourself up for success. I mainly added this last one in here because it's a very common question we get almost every implementation as we're ramping up to start the project, and I just thought it would be really good to include that in here. Afterwards, as always, we're going to be doing a Q&A, questions and answers section. So at any time through this entire presentation, you'll see either at the top or the bottom, however your Zoom is set up, there's going to be a box that says Q&A. So you can just click into that and you can type in any questions. You can make them anonymous. You can make them public, anything like that too. And we'll actually go through at the end of this presentation, read through all of those and make sure that we do respond to them. Just, add in some additional information and some more real life questions that clients are asking nowadays. Once we do that too, if we do have any questions we don't get to because of time or we don't have an answer for it right away, we definitely will and always do follow up with a personal email afterwards just to make sure that you are heard. So anything at all, doesn't even have to be about the subject, but feel free to shoot it into that Q&A section now or at the end, and we will get to it. Cool. So kicking it off today, and really to set the stage and make sure we're all on the same page about what we're talking about and how we define it, what are database population and data migration? Really, what are these two key things and how are they going to apply to you? So first of all, database population, this is just really a general term used to describe loading data into a system. I have my information on paper or in Excel or some other format, and I need to get it from system A or process A into the new one, the updated process B. This can include data migrations. That's one section of this larger picture here, but it can also include other things. Data load. A lot of systems will have specific tools to import Microsoft Excel data, manual entry, some of these other approaches. It really is just the way that you take your data and get it into the system. More specifically, and kind of what we've blended this presentation in with, is data migration services. Now, what are these? Now, this, as I have written down here, it's a very specific approach to populating your database and getting existing legacy data from one system into another. It involves writing a custom program where we'll actually take your existing data format, whether it is the database or an XML dump or some other format of that data, and pretty much translating it, migrating it, as we say, where we understand your previous soft legacy system will have a specific database format. And we're basically taking those tables and those fields and translating what do they mean in that system and how does that correlate and what do they mean in ProCal. And then it just pushes everything in there and builds and populates a ProCal or another solution's database structure with all of that good historical and current information too. So that's really the big picture here. You'll hear the both terms getting used. Database population can include like a big slew of things, and it's more of the action, while data migration is really a specific approach to that for specific or unique scenarios. So getting a little further into this now that we kind of have that all set up, what are the options here? What are the different approaches? What are we going to be able to take? So first of all, as I said, data migration is at the bottom here, and we'll get into that in just a second. But some of the other options that you're maybe more familiar with, manual data entry is one. Now, this is a case of where maybe you have your information on paper, or in some instances, we do see this where you don't even know all the assets you have, and you may need to go and do like a walk down a line to figure out what all your transmitters and transducers and all of those are that you actually own. So in these types of cases, there really isn't a source to migrate or populate into the database. And so usually your system will have, some templatizing tools or some other quick and easy ways to actually manually type that data in and then maybe build out templates and mass produce it. But this approach is really going to be everything done within your system, whether it is literally entering in each asset or copying them or some other approaches. That is more of a manual approach that we'll have to take in specific scenarios. Next up, and this is something I know we frequently do, and I think of a few of the other competitors out there do as well, but the data load utility, a data load. Now, this is going to be, this is where you take basically information in an Excel spreadsheet or an Excel format, and then you're able to run it through a tool to populate those asset records and that information into your database in just one big fell swoop. Very, very easy, very, very quick to get done. There are going to be some limitations to this, like you can't pull in historical information. This is more of just like populating your asset records and your test plans and specifications. But yeah, this is just another really good approach if you have your information in Microsoft Excel in that type of format now, or you can easily pull it into that type of format. It just is a nice, quick and easy way to pull in that type of data. The next one, this one isn't as popular, but I thought it was a really great thing to add in here, is a Fluke calibrator download. Now, this is something it's probably going to be a little more specific to ProCal. It's something we've added into our most recent versions of the software. But actually, if you take a documenting process calibrator, like a Fluke 754, for example, and you go and you perform your ad hoc calibrations out in the field with that, and you log that data and save it within the device, if you go back into ProCal and, if you were to download that, it applies all that information to the asset record, and you have your historical calibration records that way. But if there is no asset, and say you just go out and you do 20 new transmitters, when you download that data into ProCal now, it's actually going to create those asset records for you, not with all the information that you may need, and you can populate some of those fields manually or through a mass update later on. But what it does is it creates an asset record and then ties all of that historical calibration information that's saved in the calibrator to it, so that you're automatically, as well as the asset, you're creating those calibration records, the historical information, and putting it right onto the record there too. Moving into data migration. Now, this is going to be where you have a legacy database. You have maybe it's a homegrown access database using like, they're not supported anymore, so I can use them. A Honeywell document, that's one that we frequently migrate in, probably more than any other database format. But these are going to be where you have it, a soft copy of that data, and you need to pull it into the system. Now, there are tons of different ways, and that's one of the nice things about a data migration is we can be very, very flexible and configurable with the data that we pull into the system. And Mackenzie will get into that later. But really, there are two primary avenues that we most frequently see 9 out of 10 times. And that's whether or not the customer is looking to just bring in the assets and test specifications just so they can start fresh. They have a new system. All the asset records are as they expected, but they don't have to deal with any of the bloat or junk maybe that was tied previously in the system. But then for those of you who do need to bring over historical information, years and years of calibration records, audit trails, all that type of stuff too, that's when we expand upon this and we take a larger approach where we can bring in historical calibration records as well. A good example of this, there was a chemical company here in the United States a few years ago. We did a migration from their now defunct Honeywell document system, and they had about 25 years of historical calibration data that they needed to pull into ProCal. We were able to do that no problem at all. They were able to start doing a metric analysis, trending, and everything with that data, and it was like they had done it in ProCal the whole time. So it's really easy, and that's going to be more if you see value in keeping all of that traceable information, maybe for, again, metric reporting or audit reasons or anything else like that too. So that is a very, very popular approach. There are other ways to do it too, but these are primarily the main avenues that we see customers selecting. So now we've talked a little bit about what the different approaches are and everything else like that too. I wanted to get into what an actual process, start to finish, of a migration looks like, and the database population in general. Really, it's applicable both ways. That being said, Mackenzie deals with this every single day. She's really in the fire on this type of stuff, and I can't think of anyone else better to speak on it. So Mackenzie, you want to take this slide for me?
Certainly. So what is the process? The process is comprised of 7 main steps that you can see listed above. So it begins with analyzing the data and understanding the types of data you would like to migrate into the ProCal system. This is also a chance for us to understand data that should be omitted from the ProCal system moving forward. Next, we will then decide the approach that we would like to take for the database population. There's a few different considerations that should be addressed before we make that decision. That includes, the volume of data that we want to migrate over, and also the complexity of the data that needs to be migrated. Once that population approach has been finalized, we then begin the legacy data preparation phase. This is a bit technical in nature, but we basically perform analysis on the data to understand where items could be consolidated and or cleaned up prior to transitioning to ProCal. And then after the legacy data has been prepped, we begin writing the custom migration program to perform the initial test runs of the migration. It's a very iterative process where at times there may be data that is unable to be migrated in its current state. And that will then trigger a new conversation with the client so we can ensure that we're migrating all of our critical information here. Next is, once the test runs are delivered to the client, we then enter the data verification phase. This portion is very client-driven, where they have an opportunity to review the data in the system and physically walk through their typical workflows to ensure that we're hitting all of their edge cases and all of their scenarios that are required for their day-to-day work. Now, the final production run phase is then scheduled with the project manager, where the site has a clear understanding of what we call a cutoff period, where they will be paper-based until the migrated database is then returned to the client. And then that falls right into our go live, where we will execute the final production run of the database, and it is returned and installed, and the customer is officially live in the new system.
Great. Thank you, Mackenzie. Cool. So, and now we've talked a little bit about the options, the process, and you have a little more understanding of what we're talking about in this. It's, we laid out earlier all the different approaches you can take, but how do you really select which one's the best option for you? Usually your vendor is going to be able to assist with this primarily, make those suggestions, but even before that, it definitely helps to understand. So, there are several ways to populate this, but it really is going to be dependent on, first of all, the current state of your legacy data. Now, this is just, is it in an Excel spreadsheet right now? Do you just have a bunch of printed out paper or PDFs that you need to pull in? Is this, you have, another calibration management solution that you're looking to migrate away for because it doesn't meet your needs or it's no longer supported? Those are some of the big questions you're going to want to ask yourself, or most likely you'll already understand up front, and that's going to tell you what the actual options moving forward are going to be, what's possible and what's not possible, and you can start whittling it down from there. Next, really important here is what is the budget, what is your timeline, and what's your desired ROI on this? ROI both financially and through time, saving time and everything too. So obviously, economics are going to play a big factor in this. They do in every single project we work on. And it just comes down to, is it something where, you have a little bit more money to spend to make this less painful on you, really simplify the process, make it easy and quick? Or is it something where, maybe you have a longer timeline, you have some more freedom on here and you're not in such a rush to get this done? These, again, having a clear understanding of that timeline of what your expected budget is, both of those are going to be really important in helping you make that decision, because again, they'll help both qualify and disqualify specific approaches. Next up, and this is going to be, again, a really important question to ask, is what data and how much data are you looking to actually migrate into the system? Like I said earlier, something like a general asset information or even the calibration test specifications, your testing plans, those are going to be pretty universally easy to get into the solution. But then when you look at things more like historical calibration records, if you want to bring in years in history of events and records and activities that have happened before, that's usually going to require a data migration to pull all those records in and make sure that everything's tied together appropriately. Especially if you're in like an audit area where in an FDA world or some other, you're getting ISO audits frequently or environmental audits, and you need to pull all that information in, usually a data migration is going to be your best option for that. And then the last part on here really is going to be how much data cleanup is going to be required. This is something Mackenzie can talk a little bit more on too in the next slide, but it really is what are, hypothetically, a good example, say that in the past, someone's been able to easily just enter in manufacturers, all the lists of manufacturers you have, but then you have the same one, Fluke, for example, that's spelled 3 different ways with different capitalization, and, it's just used all over the place. Frequently, especially in data migrations, what we can do is we can target that, understand what type of cleanup you need or what type of just what we call data massaging is going to need to be done, what records need to be omitted, what records absolutely need to come in. And then, when we create the migration plan and the migration program, we're able to factor all of that in. Anything that is spelled this specific way will translate into a single approved way of spelling it, and then apply that to all the appropriate records and everything like that too. So that's just a small example. There is a lot that we can do with these data migrations in essence of cleaning it up and just making sure that the data, the output, and what you're going to be working with moving forward is exactly what you're expecting and exactly as you need it to just, have the best return from that. There's other factors and other keys as well, but these are probably the main really important ones to consider and think about as you're picking which approach is going to be best for you. So as we're getting kind of closer towards the end here, this is one of the biggest ones here. I really wanted to add this. I'm very, very, very frequently asked this question, and I usually have to defer to Mackenzie to answer it for me anyway. I'm going to do the exact same thing right now. So Mackenzie, do you want to help us understand a little bit more of how you can ensure data readiness?
Certainly. So ensuring data readiness is a very critical step in this process. There's many factors that you need to think about before we are ready to actually migrate the data. So this can include having a clear understanding of what data must be migrated and what should be omitted. This is also an opportunity for data cleanup, like Robert was saying. Any of those global list items like manufacturers, signal types, frequencies, or even statuses. We see it commonly entered in many, many different formats where a user couldn't find what they were looking for, so they add a new one, but we already had it in the data. This is an opportunity for us to consolidate it and make it a lot more streamlined for you in the system moving forward. Another concern is to ensure that the data records are complete. If there are records that are missing critical data, it may not be programmatically migratable, and that leads into another conversation with the client to understand exactly how they're performing their calibration work. So moving forward in the projects, it's important to understand if there are any paper records involved in the day-to-day business. Sometimes there are clients where paper records are involved, and that requires us to review the data and understand exactly if we can migrate it into the system as it stands. And then lastly, I just want to touch on the asset hierarchy. This is a great opportunity to better define your asset hierarchy in the system. ProCal handles an extensive hierarchy that can be leveraged in the ProCal Explorer, which is essentially a tree view of your assets to identify items coming due, work remaining, et cetera, to keep everyone on schedule.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Awesome. So winding down a little bit, how do you guys learn more? How do you dive deeper into this? This is a very, very dense topic. There's a ton of different routes that we can take the conversation. There's a lot of different, things to talk about, a lot of questions that our clients always frequently have too. So if there is anything that, you need, maybe you just are looking to have a scope of work built out or an estimate on a migration of your data. You're just looking to see, is your data migratable at all? Or, do you have any additional questions about the process or how quickly you can go live? Anything like that, you just need to reach out, and we have the full team here ready and excited to answer that, have the conversation, and help out however we can. So you can always get in touch with us. Obviously, phone, email, you'll have our contact information shortly after, but also feel free, just write in the chat in here, send a message, let us know you're interested in the conversation, and we'll get in touch with you guys soon that way too. It's just up to you to let us know how we can best support and help you through any of these, potential uncertainty, or hopefully after this, it's something you feel really good and understand that these implementations, they can look daunting at first, but they really are simple and they can be very, very timely. So like I said, any level of support is available, whether it's just consultation, question answering, down to doing a full migration for you guys and kicking that off too. It just, we're more than happy to help at any level that you may need. So just let us know. And as we get into that, we'll pull over to the Q&A, and I do see some good questions coming in here too. So Mackenzie and I will take turns answering these. And as we do that, I'm going to leave the contact information up. So you'll have both my direct information and Mackenzie's direct information, just in case you want to follow back up. So with that, let me pull these. I'm going to take some of the easier ones here, Mackenzie, and then I'll let you handle the more difficult ones, if that's okay. So can you migrate in a Honeywell document database? That answer is yes, actually. We get that question frequently too. I know that a lot of people are struggling with that solution. It's not supported anymore, and usually is installed on older infrastructure. But we do have a lot of experience with the migration of specifically Honeywell document, DocuRX, the Loveland, anything like that too. We've done dozens and dozens of those migrations, and they're very, very simplistic. Can you bring in two data sets at the same time? Mackenzie, do you want to answer this one?
Sure, I'll take this one. Yes, it is feasible to handle two data sets at the same time. That's actually a common request that we get from other sites. We realize that the legacy databases sometimes have different data sets where there may be like an archived or different sites within that one data set. And it's kind of up to us and the engineers to figure out the associations in the database to pull over the associated data. So that's not a problem at all.
Perfect. Thank you. So here's a good one. Lloyd, I'm going to say her name since it's not anonymous on here, but Lloyd wrote in training strategy to provide for migration during data dumps. So what I assume this is what are the different trainings that we offer, or do you have any suggestions on strategy for preparation here? So Mackenzie, I'll let you take this one, but do you have any, other suggestions? Is this something where we could, I would imagine we could just do a quick, a Zoom or a team session to review this in more detail, but do you have any other suggestions here?
I would say that would be up to like a nice meeting with us and the client to understand their workflows and kind of how we can better migrate the data into the ProCal system to make sure that you have all of those standard workflows brought over. We wouldn't want you guys to lose any type of workflow that you have, fine-grained with your techs and whatnot. So it would kind of be discovery phases where we could understand your requirements and figure out how to mold a training session for your team to get them onto the system as quickly as possible.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to say too. So these migrations, they are unique. I don't want to use the term unique per se, but everyone's a little bit different. You're using your own system configured differently than anyone else too. So there probably are going to be a few variables that we'd want to address that are unique to the data. But again, more than happy to just jump on a call or a session. You can always call into the tech support line or set something up with us. Let us know. We'll set it up, and that'd be a great thing to do. All right. Oh, okay. And I see it. There's a little clarification there. He's talking about a training environment setup. Yeah. So we do for like a training environment or a dev or test environment. We can do migration. We typically do migrations into those first so that you have all of that information in there and you can test it and verify it before we do a production run. But that's definitely something that we can, definitely something we can assist with here.
And just to expand on that, that's a very common request. We typically do it in a dev or test environment and then allow the user to have a chance for UAT testing to approve the migration, and then we'll schedule production and move forward from there.
Perfect. Thank you. Here's an anonymous one. This one actually might be a you one. I can't see. Can differing data formats or even language translations be done during migration to standardize on a common one from multiple? I don't know if you see that, if you want to read it in this list here. I'm going to leave this one to you.
Yeah. So as far as differing date formats, I would say yes, we can translate that. What we use is called a value mapping sheet that will actually standardize the dates as whatever format we want. It could be month, day, year, dashes, could be dots, could be whatever your requirements are. As far as the language translations being done during the migration, we have actually never encountered that request. I'm sure we could probably figure out a way to handle that moving forward. We would just need to know the proper translations. I'm not sure what language you're referring to specifically, but there probably would be a way to accomplish that. That would be a first time for us, though. Definitely. That's a great question, though.
Yeah, I can see that being possible. Or even if this is more along the line of like, if you needed to bring in multiple languages like English and Spanish into a migration, we could definitely do that.
Oh, yes, that regard, yes.
Yeah, definitely. I'm also
Absolutely.
thinking more about that now, the translations during too, but I'll leave that up to you. And that's an interesting thought. Okay, here's one I can answer from another one from Lloyd. Can we input historical calibration data ourselves? The answer is yes to that. It's going to be more of a manual process. But yeah, when you can manually create calibration records and apply any date to them. It'll obviously catch in the audit trail when it was added to the system in this approach, but data entry is different from the day that the work was performed. But yeah, you can go in and retroactively add as many calibration results as you need. We do see that sometimes from customers as well. So that won't be any problem at all. Here, so we have years of audit trails and other non-calibration information that we don't want to lose. How do you handle this? I would say, again, I'll let you take this one, Mackenzie, but I think it's just part of the migration. We identify what type of data that you need to pull in. And a lot of the calibration management solutions, while they're different in functionality, the core competencies will be there where, if there's audit trails in another system, we'll be able to fit them into our audit trails section. Same thing with like PMs and other activities. So we would just need to identify what that work is and make a plan to migrate it in. But we've done tons of that stuff and it's not foreign to us at all. Is that a good response, Mackenzie?
Correct. Yes, I would say we could migrate everything. If you wanted everything, we could put everything in there. It's really up to your requirements and your site restrictions and federal and whatnot.
Yeah. I'll leave this one to you, Mackenzie. Do you have specific training or tools for sites with different data sets and templates related to data readiness? I would say
that's a great question. I wouldn't say we have anything out of the box at the moment. We would need to understand your source database. We have tons of experience with various data sources. So we have lots of examples to reference where we've done a migration with X amount of sites and et cetera. So as far as templates, we could probably help guide you towards that, depending on the source type that you're looking for. But that would be something that we would have to follow up and put together for you. But we would be happy to do whatever you need.
Yeah, like we said, these all have their own little, uniqueness to them. So we would just need to have a quick look at the data and understand what your goals are with that, and we could probably build a plan out, no problem. If you are not going the migration route and more of like a data load utility route from Excel, we do have the user manual and the template loading tool, the template spreadsheet to load that information in, that you can just reach out to tech support or the account manager, your sales rep, anyone, and they'll be able to get that right over to you too, so that you can plan a little bit more. That's more if you're looking to, use the data load utility yourself to create assets. And that's a nice tool because you can use it over time, and it's not just a one-time thing. It's every time you need new assets in, you can just load them in via Excel. Now, this last one, I think I can handle on my own. If I already have a ProCal V5 database and I want to add a new site, can this be done in a live environment? The answer is yes. We frequently do this, especially with our enterprise solutions, multi-site deployments, very, very frequently. So basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mackenzie, but to my understanding, we'll do the full process in a test run, and a data migration, just like you saw before. And if you have that existing ProCal database, we would just run the migration and the testing or the population or whatever that approach is into the test environment for your review, your verification, and everything else, so that we know that it works. We know there aren't going to be any hiccups or issues, and the data is structured in ProCal exactly as you guys are expecting. At that point, once we are ready to pull it into the live ProCal system, just like with any of these migrations, there is going to be a small amount of downtime that will be scheduled. And usually it starts with you sending us the new source database. We'll ask that nobody else adds anything. And in certain instances, if you're not in the cloud and you're on an on-premise solution, you need to also send us your ProCal database versus, if you give us permission, we can just do it via the cloud, part of the benefits of the cloud. But yeah, we would just have to put a freeze on the ProCal system. We'd run through, we'd know how many hours this is going to take, what those, requirements are going to be, what that downtime is going to be in advance. We'd have that planned, we'd make announcements, and then we'd let you know as soon as it's back up and running, and you could alert your team that they can start, entering in their calibration information again. But this is something we do very, very frequently. We do have a lot of very large customers, a lot of really large, international expansions with dozens and dozens of sites, and we're constantly migrating data sets into those existing ProCal databases. So, again, I would say we would like to just kind of have a quick conversation to understand fully what those requirements on your end are, but that's not going to be a problem. We do this at least weekly. So, and then here's another data readiness question, Mackenzie. I'm going to leave this one to you, but what is your advice to how early a site should start working on data readiness? I would say probably as quickly as possible, but.
Yeah, I agree. I would say as soon as your company is looking into a data migration, that would be the point of, okay, let's take a look at what assets do we have? What is the critical information that absolutely has to be migrated into the ProCal system moving forward? And you can also reach out to us. We would be happy to help you with any of this, walking through like things to look for, tips and etc. We've done tons of analysis on different data sets. So we've seen it all, believe us. So we haven't seen any surprises,
Perfect. Yeah. And again, as soon as you're going to be moving to a new system, that's usually a good idea, but not every migration either needs to go through and make sure, a lot of time we see if you've spent a lot of time on your previous system, that the stuff's there, you're proud about the data structure and you've kept up with it over the years. Most of the time, there's going to be very, very minimal, if any, preparation for getting it migrated too. So this is more of if you're stepping into a system and you're not so confident in the reliability or integrity of the data, or again, if you've just been using it for years, you haven't kept up with it as well as you should, and you want to, you're just looking for a restart or something too. That's when we would look at, just making sure that you're comfortable with the output and what it's going to look like when you log into ProCal for the first time. All right, I think we got through all the questions here. So with that, again, no questions too small, too big. Please just reach out to us directly. You have our contact information here. You have our website. We can fill out forms. You can write into sales, anything else like that. Our tech support at primetechpa.com. Just let us know how we can help you. Let us know if you have any questions. We need to set up a meeting to talk about this in more detail. Again, nothing's too small. Nothing's not worth our time. And we're more than happy to help you guys however we can. And I see this was very helpful. So I appreciate that good feedback. Great. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to close this out and I'm going to wish you guys a great day. Thank you so much for your participation and everything. I'll talk to you guys later.